Stranded on a hostile planet, Zara huddled in the shadow of a towering alien ruin, her iridescent eyes scanning the desolate landscape for any sign of movement. The sun, a harsh and unforgiving orb, beat down upon the barren terrain, casting long shadows across the twisted metal and shattered stone that littered the planet's surface. She had been here for 3 cycles now, abandoned by her own people, the Zephyrians, for reasons she still couldn't fully comprehend. They had called her a liability, a burden that their dwindling resources could no longer support. With tears in their eyes, they had left her on this hostile world, promising to return for her when they could. But as the cycles passed and the skies remained empty, Zara began to realize the bitter truth. They were never coming back. The young Zephyrian had quickly learned that survival on this planet was no easy feat. The ruins that dotted the landscape were a haunting reminder of a once great civilization, long since fallen to the ravages of time and the harsh environment. The only other signs of life were the vicious predators that roamed the planet's surface, massive, serpentine creatures with razor-sharp fangs and an insatiable hunger for flesh. Zara had managed to avoid them thus far, using her keen senses and quick reflexes to stay one step ahead of the beasts. She had scavenged what little food and water she could from the ruins, but her supplies were running low, and she knew that she couldn't hide forever. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, Zara prepared to settle in for another long, lonely night. She was just about to retreat into the relative safety of the ruin when a sudden flash of light caught her eye. It streaked across the sky, growing larger and brighter until it resolved into the unmistakable shape of a ship, a vessel unlike any she had ever seen. Hope surged through Zara's heart as she watched the ship descend towards the planet's surface. Could it be a rescue party sent to bring her home at last? But as the vessel drew closer, she realized that something was wrong. Smoke billowed from its engines, and it was descending far too quickly, as if the pilot had lost control. With a deafening roar and a blinding flash of light, the ship crashed into the planet's surface, sending up a plume of dust and debris that obscured Zara's vision. For a moment, she was frozen in place, torn between the desire to investigate and the fear of what she might find. But as the dust began to settle and the silence returned, Zara knew that she couldn't ignore this unexpected turn of events. Taking a deep breath to steady her nerves, she set out across the barren landscape towards the crash site, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. As she approached the wreckage, Zara could see that the ship was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Its hull was sleek and streamlined, crafted from a material that shimmered in the fading light. The insignia on its side was unfamiliar, a stylized representation of a star system she didn't recognize. The crash had torn a gaping hole in the ship's side, exposing its inner workings to the harsh environment. Sparks flickered from severed wires, and the acrid scent of burnt metal hung heavy in the air. But amidst the chaos and destruction, Zara's keen eyes spotted something that made her heart skip a beat: movement within the ship's shattered interior. Cautiously, she approached the opening, her every sense on high alert. As she drew closer, she could hear a faint groaning sound emanating from within, the unmistakable sound of a creature in pain. Zara hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks against her own desperate need for companionship and aid. Steeling herself, she stepped through the breach and into the ship's dark interior. The sight that greeted her was one of utter devastation. Twisted metal, shattered glass, and sparking circuitry littered the floor. But amidst the wreckage, she spotted a figure sprawled across the ground, its form illuminated by the flickering light of the damaged control panel. It was a creature unlike any Zara had ever seen, a bipedal being with pale, pinkish skin and a shock of dark hair atop its head. It was clad in a form-fitting suit of some kind, adorned with unfamiliar symbols and insignia. And as Zara drew closer, she could see that it was badly injured, its suit torn and stained with a dark, viscous liquid that she could only assume was blood. For a moment, Zara hesitated, torn between her natural caution and the overwhelming desire to help this strange, wounded creature. But as she gazed down at its battered form, she knew that she couldn't turn away, not when it represented the first glimmer of hope she had seen in so long. Kneeling beside the fallen figure, Zara gently reached out to touch its face, marveling at the alien texture of its skin. At her touch, the creature's eyes fluttered open, revealing a pair of stunning azure orbs that seemed to pierce straight through to her soul. "Help," the creature croaked, its voice weak and strained. "Please, help me." And in that moment, Zara knew that her life had irrevocably changed. She had found a kindred spirit in this strange, wounded being from another world, and together, they would face whatever challenges this hostile planet could throw at them. An unlikely rescuer. Captain Jace Riker groaned as consciousness slowly returned, his body aching with a myriad of pains that seemed to radiate from every nerve ending. As his vision gradually cleared, he found himself staring up into a pair of iridescent eyes set in a delicate alien face. For a moment, he thought he must be dreaming, or perhaps he had died in the crash, and this was some strange, otherworldly afterlife. But as the pain in his body reasserted itself, he realized that he was very much alive, and that the alien gazing down at him was no figment of his imagination. Who are you?" he managed to croak, his throat raw and parched. The alien hesitated for a moment, as if trying to understand his words. Then, slowly and carefully, it spoke in a language that was utterly foreign to Jace's ears. He shook his head, trying to convey his lack of comprehension, and the alien's face fell in disappointment. Struggling to sit up, Jace took stock of his surroundings, the shattered remains of his ship, the acrid scent of burnt metal, and the eerie, otherworldly landscape that stretched out beyond the gaping hole in the hull. He had been on a routine scouting mission when his ship had been caught in some kind of energy storm, throwing him off course and sending him hurtling towards this strange, uncharted planet. As he tried to stand, a wave of dizziness and pain washed over him, and he stumbled forward, nearly falling to the ground. But before he could hit the unforgiving metal floor, a pair of slender, surprisingly strong arms caught him, holding him steady. Jace looked up into the alien's face, seeing concern and compassion etched into its delicate features. Despite the vast differences between them, he felt a sudden, inexplicable connection to this strange being, a sense that they were kindred spirits, brought together by the capricious whims of fate. With the alien's help, Jace managed to limp his way out of the wreckage and into the harsh, unforgiving light of the alien's sun. As his eyes adjusted to the brightness, he saw the full extent of the devastation. His ship was a twisted, mangled ruin, its once sleek lines now jagged and broken. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm him, Jace forced himself to focus on the task at hand. He was a survivor, trained to endure the harshest of conditions and the most overwhelming of odds. And with the help of his newfound alien companion, he would find a way to repair his ship and escape this hostile world. Over the next few days, Jace and the alien worked tirelessly to salvage what they could from the wreckage. Despite the language barrier between them, they quickly developed a system of gestures and facial expressions that allowed them to communicate on a basic level. Jace learned that the alien's name was Zara, and that she had been stranded on this planet for far longer than he had. As they worked side by side, Jace found himself growing increasingly fascinated by Zara's unique abilities and perspective. She seemed to possess a deep, intuitive understanding of the planet's ecosystem, and was able to locate hidden caches of food and water that Jace would have never found on his own. At the same time, Jace began to teach Zara about his own world, the vast, sprawling reaches of human space, the wonders of technology and science, and the enduring resilience of the human spirit. Despite the vast differences between their species, he found that they shared a common curiosity and thirst for knowledge that transcended all barriers. As the days turned into weeks, Jace and Zara's bond deepened, evolving from a simple partnership of necessity into a true friendship built on mutual respect and understanding. Together, they faced the challenges of this hostile world head-on, relying on each other's strengths to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. But even as they made progress in repairing the ship, Jace knew that their journey was far from over. The energy storm that had brought him to this planet had damaged more than just his vessel. It had also fried his long-range communications system, leaving him unable to send a distress signal or call for help. If they were ever going to escape this planet and return to the stars, they would need to find another way. A way that might require them to delve even deeper into the mysteries of this alien world and the ancient civilization that had once called it home. Secrets of a Lost Civilization. Zara knelt beside the ancient, vine-covered pillar, her slender fingers tracing the intricate patterns etched into its weathered surface. Though she couldn't decipher the language of the long-dead civilization that had once thrived on this world, she could feel the weight of their history and knowledge pressing down on her like a physical force. Behind her, Jace was hunched over a pile of salvaged components, his brow furrowed in concentration as he worked to repair the ship's damaged systems. Despite the progress they had made over the past few weeks, they were still a long way from being able to lift off and leave this hostile planet behind. As she studied the ancient carvings, Zara's mind drifted back to the stories her people had told of the great civilizations that had once spanned the stars, tales of advanced technology, sprawling cities, and unimaginable wonders. She had always dreamed of exploring those lost worlds, of uncovering their secrets and learning from their wisdom. Now, stranded on a planet that was home to the remnants of one of those ancient civilizations, Zara felt a thrill of excitement and wonder coursing through her veins. What secrets might these ruins hold? What knowledge and technology might they uncover that could help them escape this world and return to the stars? Jace's voice called out from behind her, breaking her reverie. "Zara, come take a look at this." She hurried over to where he was crouched beside a large, circular panel set into the ground. As she drew closer, she saw that the panel was covered in the same intricate carvings and symbols that adorned the ruins around them. "I think it's some kind of door or hatch," Jace said, running his fingers along the edges of the panel, "but I can't figure out how to open it." Zara studied the symbols more closely, her mind racing with possibilities. The patterns seemed to be arranged in a specific sequence, like a code or a puzzle waiting to be solved. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached out and pressed her fingers against the symbols in a particular order. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low rumble that seemed to come from deep within the earth, the panel began to slide open, revealing a dark, yawning chasm beneath. Jace let out a low whistle of amazement. "Incredible," he breathed. "How did you know how to do that?" Zara shook her head, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "It just felt right." Together, they descended into the darkness, their way lit by the flickering beam of Jace's flashlight. The air grew colder and more stale as they made their way deeper underground, the walls around them closing in until they felt like they were walking through the throat of some great, slumbering beast. And then, just when it seemed like the tunnel would go on forever, they emerged into a vast, cavernous chamber that took their breath away. The walls were lined with glowing, pulsing veins of energy, casting an eerie, otherworldly light over the space. In the center of the chamber stood a towering structure that seemed to be made of pure, shimmering crystal, a monument to the advanced technology and artistry of the civilization that had built it. As they approached the structure, Zara could feel the energy emanating from it, a palpable force that seemed to thrum through her very bones. Jace reached out to touch the crystal's surface, his eyes wide with wonder and awe. "This is incredible," he breathed. "The level of technology required to create something like this, it's beyond anything I've ever seen." Zara nodded in agreement, her own mind racing with the implications of their discovery. If they could harness the power of this ancient technology, they might be able to repair the ship and escape this planet once and for all. But even as hope blossomed within her, Zara couldn't shake the sense of unease that had settled over her like a shadow. There was something about this place, something dark and foreboding that lurked just beneath the surface of its beauty and wonder. As they explored further, they began to uncover more signs of the civilization that had once called this planet home. Intricate murals and carvings depicted scenes of great cities and mighty starships, of beings with strange and wondrous abilities wielding technology that seemed almost magical in its sophistication. But there were darker images too, scenes of war and destruction, of terrible weapons that could shatter worlds and snuff out the lives of billions in an instant. And as they delved deeper into the heart of the ancient structure, Zara began to realize the terrible truth of what had happened to this once great civilization. They had been undone by their own hubris, by their relentless pursuit of power and knowledge at any cost. In their quest to achieve godlike status, they had unleashed forces beyond their control and had ultimately been consumed by the very technology they had created to elevate themselves. As the weight of that realization settled over her, Zara felt a chill run down her spine. She turned to Jace, her eyes wide with fear and trepidation. "We have to be careful," she whispered. "The power contained within this place, it's beyond anything we can imagine. If we're not careful, we could end up just like them." Jace nodded solemnly, his own face etched with grim determination. "We'll take only what we need," he promised, "and we'll use it to get off this rock and back to civilization. But we won't let it consume us. We won't make the same mistakes they did." With those words, they set to work, carefully studying the ancient technology and trying to decipher its secrets. It was painstaking, delicate work. One wrong move could unleash catastrophic forces that would destroy them both. But even as they labored to unravel the mysteries of the past, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that something ancient and malevolent had awakened in the depths of this forgotten world and was now reaching out to claim them as its own. The hunt begins. Jace's heart pounded in his chest as he raced through the twisting, vine-choked corridors of the ancient ruins, Zara's hand clasped tightly in his own. Behind them, he could hear the thunderous footfalls and ear-splitting roars of the creatures that pursued them, massive, serpentine beasts with razor-sharp claws and teeth like jagged knives. They had first encountered the creatures a few days earlier, while exploring a particularly remote section of the ruins. At first, they had seemed like little more than another strange and wondrous form of alien life, albeit one that was significantly larger and more aggressive than anything they had encountered before. But as they had delved deeper into the ruins, they had begun to realize the true nature of these beasts. They were not simply mindless animals, driven by instinct and the need to survive. They were intelligent, cunning predators, with a level of sophistication and adaptability that defied explanation. And they had developed a particular taste for anything that was not of this world, including the two stranded survivors who now fled for their lives through the crumbling remains of a long-dead civilization. Jace risked a glance over his shoulder, his heart leaping into his throat as he caught a glimpse of the creatures that pursued them. They were gaining ground rapidly, their massive bodies slithering and undulating through the narrow passages with terrifying speed and agility. Beside him, Zara was panting heavily, her face etched with fear and exhaustion. She had been pushing herself to the limit over the past few days, using every ounce of her strength and cunning to help them stay one step ahead of their pursuers. But Jace could see that she was nearing the end of her endurance, and if they didn't find a way to escape soon, they would both be lost. Suddenly, the corridor ahead of them opened up into a vast, cavernous chamber, the walls lined with pulsing veins of energy that cast an eerie, otherworldly light over the space. In the center of the chamber stood a towering structure of shimmering crystal, the same one they had discovered just a few short days before. Jace's mind raced as he tried to formulate a plan. If they could just reach the structure, they might be able to use the ancient technology within to fend off the creatures and buy themselves some time. But even as he started forward, he felt a sudden, searing pain in his leg, and he stumbled to the ground with a cry of agony. Zara was at his side in an instant, her eyes wide with fear and concern. "Jace," she cried out, her voice trembling. "What's wrong?" Jace gritted his teeth against the pain, trying to push himself back to his feet. But as he looked down at his leg, he saw a deep, ragged gash that ran from his knee to his ankle, a wound that could only have been inflicted by the razor-sharp claws of one of the pursuing beasts. He looked up at Zara, his eyes filled with a grim resignation. "I can't make it," he said softly. "You have to go on without me." But Zara shook her head fiercely, her jaw set with determination. "No," she said firmly. "I won't leave you behind. We started this journey together, and we'll finish it together, no matter what." With a strength that belied her slender frame, she hauled Jace to his feet, draping his arm over her shoulders and half carrying, half dragging him towards the shimmering structure ahead. Behind them, the roars of the creatures grew louder and more furious, their massive bodies slamming against the walls of the chamber as they closed in for the kill. But even as the beasts bore down upon them, Zara refused to give up. With a final, desperate surge of energy, she propelled them both forward into the blinding light of the crystal structure and into a realm beyond anything they had ever known. A desperate gamble. As the blinding light of the crystal structure enveloped them, Jace felt a sudden, wrenching sensation in the pit of his stomach, as if he were being hurled through space and time by some unseen force. His mind reeled with confusion and disorientation, his senses overwhelmed by the strange, alien energies that surged through his body. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the sensation abated, and he found himself standing in a vast, cavernous chamber that seemed to stretch on into infinity. The walls were lined with pulsing veins of energy, and the air was filled with a strange, ethereal hum that seemed to vibrate through his very bones. Beside him, Zara was staring around in wonder and awe, her eyes wide with amazement. "What is this place?" she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. Jace shook his head slowly, trying to make sense of their surroundings. "I don't know," he admitted, "but whatever it is, it's ancient and powerful beyond anything we've ever encountered before." As they explored the chamber further, they began to uncover more signs of the advanced technology that had once thrived on this world. Intricate control panels and holographic displays flickered to life at their approach, revealing schematics and equations that were far beyond their understanding. But even as they marveled at the wonders around them, Jace couldn't shake the sense of urgency that gnawed at his gut. They were still trapped on this hostile world, with no way to repair their ship and no means of contacting help from the outside. And with each passing moment, the creatures that hunted them drew ever closer, their hunger for alien flesh driving them to new heights of savagery and ferocity. It was Zara who finally voiced the thought that had been lurking in the back of Jace's mind. "We need to use this technology to repair the ship," she said quietly, her gaze fixed on the shimmering crystal structure that dominated the center of the chamber. "It's our only chance of getting off this planet alive." Jace nodded slowly, his mind racing with the implications of what she was suggesting. If they could harness the power of this ancient technology, they might be able to not only repair their ship, but also enhance its capabilities beyond anything they had ever dreamed of. They could become the explorers and adventurers they had always longed to be, boldly going where no one had gone before. But even as hope blossomed within him, Jace couldn't shake the sense of unease that had settled over him like a shroud. There was something about this technology, something ancient and powerful and utterly alien, that filled him with a deep, primal fear. If they were to wield such power, they would need to do so with the utmost care and caution, lest they unleash forces beyond their control. Together, they set to work, poring over the ancient schematics and control panels, trying to decipher the secrets of the crystal structure and the technology it contained. It was painstaking, delicate work, requiring every ounce of their skill and knowledge. But even as they labored, they both knew that time was running out. With each passing moment, the creatures drew closer, their hunger for flesh driving them to new heights of savagery and desperation. In the end, it was a desperate gamble, a last-ditch effort to harness the power of the ancient technology and use it to escape this world once and for all. As Jace and Zara stood before the shimmering crystal structure, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation, they both knew that they were about to embark on a journey from which there might be no return. But even as they steeled themselves for the unknown, they both knew that they had no choice. They had come too far and fought too hard to give up now. And so, with a final, determined nod to each other, they stepped forward into the blinding light of the crystal and into a realm beyond anything they had ever known. The sacrifice. As the blinding light of the crystal structure enveloped them once more, Jace felt a sudden, searing pain coursing through his body, as if every nerve ending were on fire. He cried out in agony, his knees buckling beneath him as he collapsed to the ground. Beside him, Zora was faring no better. Her face was contorted in a mask of pain and fear, her body convulsing as the ancient technology surged through her. For a moment, Jace feared that they had made a terrible mistake, that they had unleashed forces beyond their control and were now paying the price for their hubris. But even as the pain threatened to overwhelm him, Jace forced himself to focus on the task at hand. They had come too far to give up now, and if they were to have any hope of escaping this world and returning to the stars, they would need to see this through to the end. With a final, agonized cry, Jace pushed himself to his feet, his body trembling with the effort. Beside him, Zara did the same, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination that belied the pain and exhaustion that racked her slender frame. Together, they staggered towards the center of the chamber, where the crystal structure pulsed and thrummed with an otherworldly energy. As they drew closer, they could feel the power emanating from it, a palpable force that seemed to thrum through their very bones. And then, just as they reached the base of the structure, they heard a sound that made their blood run cold, the thunderous roar of the creatures that had pursued them, echoing through the cavernous chamber like the howl of some ancient, primal beast. Jace turned to Zara, his eyes wide with fear and desperation. "We have to activate the technology now," he said urgently. "It's our only chance." Zara nodded, her jaw set with grim determination. "I'll hold them off," she said softly. "You get the crystal working." Jace started to protest, but Zara silenced him with a fierce, unyielding look. "I'm the only one who can do this," she said firmly. "My people have a connection to this world that you don't. I can use that connection to buy you the time you need." And with those words, she turned and raced towards the entrance of the chamber, her body poised and ready for battle. Jace watched her go, his heart aching with a profound sense of loss and desperation. He knew that she was right, that only she had the power to hold off the creatures long enough for him to activate the crystal. But the thought of losing her, of leaving her behind on this hostile world, was almost more than he could bear. With a final, anguished look towards the entrance of the chamber, Jace turned back to the crystal structure, his mind racing as he tried to decipher the ancient technology. He worked feverishly, his fingers flying over the control panels and holographic displays, searching for the key that would unlock the structure's power and allow them to escape this world once and for all. And then, just as he was beginning to despair, he found it. A sequence of symbols and equations that seemed to resonate with the crystal on a fundamental level. With a final, triumphant cry, he input the sequence into the control panel and watched in awe as the crystal structure began to pulse and glow with an otherworldly light. But even as hope blossomed within him, Jace heard a sound that made his heart stop, a piercing, agonized scream that could only have come from Zara. He raced towards the entrance of the chamber, his heart pounding with fear and desperation. And there, at the threshold of the chamber, he saw a sight that would haunt him for the rest of his days. Zara lay on the ground, her body broken and bleeding, surrounded by the lifeless bodies of the creatures she had fought so bravely to hold off. She looked up at him, her eyes glazed with pain and exhaustion, and managed a weak, tremulous smile. "Go," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the crystal structure. "Leave me behind. Save yourself." But Jace shook his head fiercely, tears streaming down his face. "No," he said firmly, "I won't leave you. We started this journey together, and we'll finish it together, no matter what." And with those words, he gathered her broken body into his arms and carried her back towards the crystal structure, the power of the ancient technology surging through them both like a living flame. He didn't know what lay ahead, what challenges and dangers they would face on the long journey back to the stars. but he knew that as long as they were together, they could face anything, even the darkest depths of the unknown. A new beginning. Jace sat at the controls of his ship, his gaze fixed on the view screen before him. The stars stretched out into infinity, a vast expanse of wonder and possibility that called to him like a siren's song. Beside him, Zara lay on a makeshift bed, her body still weak and battered from the ordeal they had endured on the alien world. But even in her weakened state, Jace could see the fierce determination that burned within her, the unquenchable spirit that had carried them both through the darkest depths of despair. It had been a long and perilous journey back to the stars, fraught with danger and uncertainty at every turn. The ancient technology they had harnessed on the alien world had proven to be both a blessing and a curse, granting them the power to escape their predicament, but also attracting the attention of those who sought to claim that power for themselves. They had been pursued across the galaxy by pirates and scavengers, mercenaries and warlords, all eager to get their hands on the secrets of the long-dead civilization. But through it all, Jace and Zara had remained steadfast in their determination to keep the technology out of the wrong hands, knowing that in the wrong hands it could spell doom for the entire galaxy. And now, at long last, they had reached the end of their journey. The ship was repaired, the technology safely hidden away, and the coordinates for Earth programmed into the navigation system. All that remained was to make the final jump, to cross the vast expanse of space and time that separated them from their home. Jace reached out and took Zara's hand in his own, feeling the warmth and strength of her touch. "Are you ready?" he asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Zara nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I'm ready," she said firmly. "Let's go home." And with those words, Jace engaged the ship's engines, feeling the thrum of power coursing through the vessel as it leaped forward into the void. The stars blurred and stretched around them, the fabric of space and time bending and warping as they hurtled towards their destination. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the jump was over. The ship decelerated rapidly, the stars snapping back into focus as they emerged from the wormhole. And there, floating before them in the vast expanse of space, was a sight that made Jace's heart leap with joy and relief. Earth, home. As they descended through the atmosphere, Jace could see the sprawling cities and lush green landscapes of his homeworld, the place he had always dreamed of returning to. And beside him, Zara gazed out at the wonders of this new world with wide, wonder-filled eyes, her heart swelling with the promise of a new beginning. They touched down on a grassy field on the outskirts of a bustling metropolis, the ship's engines powering down with a soft, almost musical hum. For a long moment, they simply sat there, savoring the feeling of solid ground beneath their feet and the sweet, familiar scent of Earth's air. And then, hand in hand, they stepped out of the ship and into the bright, golden light of a new day. They knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges and obstacles to overcome, prejudices and misunderstandings to confront. But they also knew that they had each other, that the bond they had forged in the crucible of adversity was stronger than any force in the universe. And with that knowledge, they stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead together. As they walked towards the city, Jace turned to Zara, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Welcome to Earth," he said softly. "Welcome home." And in that moment, Zara knew that she had finally found the place she truly belonged, not on some distant alien world, but here, by Jace's side, on the planet he called home. And as they walked forward into the bright, shining promise of a new future, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, now and always. The end.